Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and thank you very much for Chris for inviting us here tonight and being a dynamic chairman of the Barnet branch, and to Andrew Reid for hosting it at his great facility here, great community facility in Barnet. I'm Communications Director for Ukip. Before that I was Chief Political Commentator on the Daily Express, and my colleague Tim is the Head of Policy for Ukip. And I think it's fair to say both of us are what the former Ukip MEP Godfrey Bloom would term, with some sense of derision, new Ukip, which was something he complained about after stepping out of line once too often and portraying the sort of image of our party that he was obviously very comfortable with. I don't know about Tim, he'll tell you later, but I'm very comfortable with the image New Ukip. It's not like New Labour because we didn't make it up, Godfrey did, but if that's what he wants to call us, then that's what we're happy to be called. Because for many years, Ukip suffered from an image that our opponents tried to portray us. In the words of Michael Howard, it was cranks and gadflies when Ukip first started having success. And then David Cameron, a sort of nastier attack on us. He called us fruitcakes, loonies and closet racists, because he wanted to send out the message to Conservative voters who found parts of the Ukip message attractive that we were not a respectable party to vote for. I don't think he believed that. I think it was a cynical PR man's sort of ploy to try and keep us down, keep us in our box. Well, we're not in our box anymore. I remember when Ukip membership in Christmas 2012, about 15 months ago, went through the 20,000 mark, which for a smaller party was a massive landmark. In those 15 months since, we put on an average of 1,000 members every month, to the point where tomorrow night, when Nigel Farage goes toe-to-toe with Nick Clegg in the first of the live Europe debates, we are very hopeful of going through the 35,000 members mark. We are the fastest growing political movement in this country. Some would say the only growing political movement in this country. And I think we can rely to the idea that people aren't interested in joining political parties anymore. That's a nice comforting notion for the old parties who've stopped connecting with the public and with voters and want to excuse their plunging line on the graph. At the current rate, we will have more members than Liberal Democrats for the next general election, and when that graph crosses, I'm predicting the lines will never cross back again, because we believe we are now really connecting with the British public, and the reason we're doing so is quite simply that we are putting new choices on the ballot paper for the British people, choices that if they've ever been there, haven't been there for very many years, because often in this country, before UKIP's rise, there weren't three political parties really. There was only one entity, which many of us in UKIP refer to as the Lib Lab Con. So I want to talk to you tonight about those new choices we're putting on the ballot paper, and to see if you agree with them, if you like the sound of them, and if you do, and you think they're important for Britain, I'm going to urge you to back us, to come and help us, because everyone in this party is doing their contribution, giving their full contribution to what we believe are great patriotic causes. And it's not jingoistic, it's about Britain believing in itself again and Britain taking back democratic control of its citizens. So the first new choice we're putting on the ballot paper as a mainstream party that hasn't been there for a very long time won't surprise you. It's to get out of the European Union, saving Britain £55 million every single day. And that, I'm sure, has overwhelming support from the British public, 2-1 in favour if there was a referendum tomorrow of getting out. But that's probably the policy we're best known for, and some people say, when they stop talking about cranks and gadflies and all the rest of it, that we're a one-trick pony. But we so aren't a one-trick pony. For a start, something flows from that decision to get out of the European Union, and that is that this country can take back control of its borders and its immigration system, and that is very important. But I think that parties, as well as deriding their opponents, must also put their hands up if they've got the tone a bit wrong themselves. And I want to talk to you tonight quite a bit about immigration, because Ukip for many years was the one party trying to raise the downsides of uncontrolled mass immigration. You know, it made no sense in a congested country like Britain to be importing people for welfare tourism, to be importing people to go on to benefits or to earn the minimum wage and probably claim more in work benefits than they were paying tax into the system. But because immigration wasn't really allowed to be debated and none of the other parties addressed these issues at all, I think we found ourselves at times exclusively talking about the downsides of immigration. And that was a valid role because no one else was entering the debate like that. But perhaps at times we also forgot about the upsides of immigration, that there are many people, many very talented people from all over the world who've come to this country, and in particular to this city, and have put more into the pot than they've taken out, have brought investment, have created jobs, and probably most importantly of all, have subscribed to the basic norms of British society and British cultural values, created employment, really added to the vibrancy of our country. And I think as UKIP, my ambitions for UKIP is that UKIP will be the party that gives immigration a good name again. Right? And we say, I hope that all UKIP people will remember to say thank you to the immigrants who've come in, created wealth, employment, opportunities, subscribed to our cultural values, put more in the pot than they've taken out. And they undoubtedly hundreds of thousands of such people, and we need to honour them and say thank you and make clear we're a party that welcomes people like that. Right. UKIP is not an anti-immigration party, but it's an anti-mass, uncontrolled immigration party, right? And that is a crucial distinction, which our opponents don't like to acknowledge, but we must make it. We must make them acknowledge it, because I'm sure that's where the vast majority of British people are. So why we connect that to the European Union is, with the European Union membership comes this rule about complete freedom of movement, and since enlargement that means freedom of movement for people from economies which pay wages a small fraction of the wages, even the minimum wage that's available in this country. And that really is unsustainable. So we've seen since 2004 the greatest migratory wave this country has ever seen, and Labour didn't even take advantage of the transitional immigration controls that were available. They just sort of allowed complete freedom of movement for all those new countries, some of them quite large countries, from day one. And I think that has put our public services, our social housing under massive pressure, our schools and hospitals too. And often, many of the people who've come in have tried to work, got employment, indeed have worked, but we offer in this country a fairly advanced welfare state that most of us are proud of. So, for instance, if someone comes in just with 2 school-aged children, that's £5,000 a year just for a school place, another £1,700 a year on child benefit. If they're in low-paid work, it's another £500 each per pupil because of the pupil premium, and that's before you start talking about the NHS costs, the cost of the transport system, and all the rest of it. So what we're getting here is large multinational employers, many of whom don't pay in much corporation tax themselves, having a source of really cheap labour, and the employment not generating very much at all for the public purse, and it's ordinary taxpayers who are being fleeced through this. And I don't blame people coming and wanting to improve their lives, but if it's a situation that's actually making the public finances, which let's face it are shot to pieces anyway, even worse and even more parlous, then that is a terrible situation. And that's before we go on to the effect on our own youth unemployment, which has been rising, oddly enough, since 2004 as well, and indeed on wage compression, particularly in working class occupations, where wages have been falling behind the cost of living for 6 or 7 years in a row now. So that immigration system is bust, and the more the European Union expands and enlarges, the more unsustainable it becomes. And only by leaving the European Union can we get what Britain really needs, that would give immigration a good name again, and that's a points-based system like they have in Australia, based on work permits, where people come in to fill the skill shortages that there are. They come in to do jobs which earn high wages, which there are skill shortages for, skilled occupations, paying in more tax than they take out, and we need to make sure they subscribe to basic British values like freedom of expression and gender equality too. And I think if we communicate that immigration policy in that spirit, that we can really connect with London as well, because let's face it, London is a very optimistic, dynamic, go-ahead city, and much of that dynamism has come from immigrants who have contributed, who have brought new ideas, and I don't think London as a whole will ever vote for a kind of policy offer on immigration that just says, put up the shutters, we don't want any of them, that kind of mean-spirited negative effect. So the motto from me is, let's be the party that gives immigration a good name again by controlling it, by having volume control and quality control as well. Now, I read a statistic the other day, I think it was 28% of all the vagrants in central London, and I have to say vagrancy and begging I think is massively on the rise in the last 2 or 3 years in central London, and that appalls me, but 28% of them are from Eastern Europe. Now, I don't think London ever had a skills shortage on vagrancy. I don't think there was a gap to be filled of benefit to this country. Of course there wasn't. And yet we find ourselves turning away highly skilled people. Surgeons from India or New Zealand aren't able to come here because the government's got itself into a situation where there's a net immigration target, and it can only influence immigration from a certain group of countries, the non-EU countries, and it has to accept everyone from the EU. So we have a very skewed immigration system because of that.
That is absolutely right, because there is Australian, there's New Zealand people that speak our language, they can come here, they're fully qualified, need a visa or anything like that. But then we get EU people coming in there, haven't got the qualification, can't even speak English.
Right, so that's what I'm saying. We need a comprehensive point system that doesn't discriminate against any country in the world, judges people on their merits and what they can offer. And that's a new choice that Ukip is putting on the ballot paper that the Lib Lab Con is unable and unwilling to match.